Anyways, hi guys. My name's Nick, as you've heard, Nick Froese. It's with an O, not an A. I'm one of the directors here. I help run Open Space. I'm in my last year of a theology degree at Providence. So if you're here from Providence and you have no idea who I am, it's in my last year and I'm like never at school. So I'm sorry. If I run into you, say hi, please. I swear I'll try to be nice. I help run youth at a church in Steinbach. Yeah, it's fun. So if anything I say sounds kind of youthy or like I'm talking to you and you think, does he think I'm a high schooler? Just let it pass. Like it'll be good. Trust me. So tonight I want to talk to you about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. As you can see on the PowerPoint, it's suffering in the Christian life, and that's something that isn't easy to talk about. It's not easy to live through it. It's just a complicated subject. So I just want to, before I get into it, I just want to share my heart for this message. And I want to talk about this topic with a lot of gentleness and grace, because I know it's something that's like not easy to go through. It's not something that's easy to talk about. But it's something that is universally experienced. I was in a class a while back, and we had I felt like an imposter. It was like a seminary level class, and I was just kind of sitting there with all these people who are training to be counselors and pastors, and I felt kind of out of place. But someone was saying, one of the counselors was saying how our Western, like the world we're in, we're so kind of allergic to suffering, and like we always want to get into the highs of life and never really be in the valleys of life. But one of the things this counselor said was that it's actually, there's so much to learn in the lows, and we just kind of want to brush past it. We don't really like telling people that we're going through lows. We just want to get on to the good part of life as soon as possible. And I think it's something that's important to talk about. So have you guys ever heard of a lady named Elisabeth Elliot? Yeah, a little whoop, yeah. She was a missionary. I was trying to figure out a way to open this. I was trying to share my heart, and I couldn't find my words to say it, so I stole somebody else's words to say it. Elisabeth Elliot was a missionary. She was a missionary with, her husband went to Ecuador, and he was killed by the people he was going on mission to. And then that's a really hard part of life. That's not something easy. That's not something easy to go through. And then she ends up going to the same people who killed her husband and evangelizing to them. And she spends years there, and she comes back to America. She gets married again, and her second husband dies of cancer a few years after they get married. There's a bunch of other things in her life that are really hard, but she's always, like, anything you read from her or any, like, quote, she's always so, like, happy, and it's kind of crazy. I had to think about that. So I have a quote from her that I kind of want to use as a way to talk about this tonight. So here it goes. There have been some hard things in my life, of course, as there have been in yours, and I cannot say to you that I know exactly what you're going through, but I can say that I know the one who knows, and I've come to see that it's through the deepest suffering that God has taught me the deepest lesson. I read this and I was like, oh, that's perfect. Nothing I can say can make that sound good. Out of my own mouth. So, with that, I haven't lived your life, you haven't lived mine, but Christ knows both of us, and he knows the life we've gone through, and he's there. And so I want to talk about Christ's heart and his deep love for us in our sufferings, and how he is a comforter. That's the word I'm looking for, a comforter. So this message has been something that's been stirring in my heart for like a year and a half, I think, and I'm glad it didn't escape my heart a year and a half ago, because I think I needed to go through some stuff real quick to actually formulate what I wanted to say. But I want to start with one passage tonight. You can go to the next one there. This is from Romans 8:16-17. This is what it says. If you've grown up in like charismatic circles or Pentecostal circles like me, this is like a passage you definitely have heard before. It's something. It's really. I'm just going to read it. The Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, then heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. And that's normally where our quoting of that passage ends. And it's great. Like there's a lot of richness in this passage, and that part, I'm not trying to like sound like, oh, why don't you guys ever like quote the end of the verse? Because whatever, that's good. It might sound that's what I'm saying, but it's just, I understand the context that it's used in. That's important. It's telling us about our, like how we're co-heirs with Christ. We're like children of God. It's beautiful. But if you want to go to the next slide, I think there's a reason why people don't want to read the last part of this passage. And it says this: provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him. So it makes sense that this is a passage that's kind of like, oh, we're reading through it and like, oh yeah, that's great. Like, what does that mean? That's crazy. It makes sense to make us a little uncomfortable. But that, if you read there, that provided in the sentence is really important, because it tells us that as followers of Christ, we can expect to endure hardships in this life, and being a Christian doesn't let us escape from that. But there's also something really beautiful about suffering. It says that we actually get to enter into glory with Christ through that. So you might be wondering, what kind of suffering is Paul talking about here? If you're not wondering that, that's just welcome to my brain. I'm like, what does that mean? So in the previous passage, in Romans 8:13, he says, for if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit, you will live. So it kind of sounds like Paul's talking about this, like suffering in Christ is kind of this self-denial, this, like when Christ calls the disciples, he says, if anyone, this is later after he's called the disciples, but if anyone would follow after me, you must pick up your cross and deny yourself. There's this denial of ourself that is inherently actually not easy. With like Peter, when Christ calls him, there's this instant of like having to leave his old life behind. He drops his nets and he follows Christ. So I think that's an aspect of it. But there's also this really, I'm just exposing how nerdy I am in this next sentence. It's okay. There's a great commentator I read on, like, I was trying to figure out stuff like what's happening here in Romans, and there's this guy named Douglas Moo. He's got a commentary, and I think he just sums up perfectly what Paul's talking about in the suffering here. And he says, rather, the suffering Paul speaks of here refers to the daily anxieties, tensions, and persecutions that are the lot for those who follow Christ. So that's a blanket statement. That's like kind of helps you visualize what Paul's talking about. And I love that definition. And I want you guys to try to imagine something with me for a bit. So if it helps you to close your eyes, you can do that. But when Paul's writing this letter, he's writing it to the Christians in Rome. So if you were a recent convert to Christianity in Rome, this is what your life might have looked like. You're following Christ. You are visiting with your little church community. It's very small. It's meeting in a house. And no one really likes you anymore as soon as they find out you're a Christian. Your family won't talk to you anymore, maybe, because you do this thing called partaking in like communion, or what we call communion, or like the Lord's Supper. And when you explain it to people, it sounds like you're a cannibal, and they don't understand it because they've never heard of it before. Maybe you're like just starting a small business or something, and now you can't run your business anymore, because to run a business, you have to be a part of the temple sacrifices. Everything goes through the temple systems. You can't do that anymore because they think you're an atheist because you deny all the other gods. And these are hard, dealing with family rejection for your faith, dealing with like not being able to like live in society and be a part of society. That's hard. But in a few years, he's the emperor right now. His name's Nero. He's kind of chill right now. He's not totally insane yet, but he's about to have the worst like reign for you. I mean, he thought it was a party the whole time, but it's really bad. So like, if you think the suffering's bad now, it's about to crank up a lot, because it gets really bad. Without being like super vulgar, it gets bad. Like, there's a lot of people that die. Christians, he kills for their faith. So, but for now, you find peace in Paul's words, that these sufferings bring you to glory in Christ. The world's treating you the same way it treated Christ. That's what Paul is trying to get his people that he's writing to get a hang of, and get a hold of. And another thing you might be confused about if you are this early Roman Christian is, who is this Paul guy anyways? He's like writing a lot of stuff at us. We know he's like, maybe he talks about how he wants to visit us. I actually don't know if he would have visited there yet. Anyways, but you might be wondering, does this guy actually even understand the sufferings I endure? You might not know about a lot about him. Yeah, the slide, yeah. Did Paul really understand suffering. And simply put, my boy Paul's been through it. Like, he knows what suffering is. In Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, he gives us, like, it's perfect. I was like, I wonder if there's one text where he could just show all the sufferings that Paul went through, and it's right there. It's the Bible so cool. So, but before I get into it, the context I want to give you guys, that's really small. Okay, oh, sorry guys. The context I want to give you guys here. So he's writing this in this whole list of things. He's talking to these guys called the super apostles. It's like the Avengers, but bad. Back then, they were these people who were like perfect by Roman standards. They had, I don't know, they probably looked really good. Their bodies weren't beat up like Paul's was. They were really good leaders. They're really like, whatever this is, very, very easy to talk to. Whatever I meant by trying to do this, I don't know what I'm doing. They're like the perfect leaders in the eyes of the world. Paul sees their worldly credentials and says, oh, let me raise you one. Here's all of my sufferings that I've gone through for Christ. So I'm going to read this to you because I don't actually know if you can read it because it's so small about that. Sorry about that. This is 2 Corinthians 11, verse 23 to 28. Are they servants of Christ? So he's talking about the super apostles. I am a better one. I'm talking like a madman with far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless beatings and often near death. 5 times I received at the hands of the Jews the 40 lashes less one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked, a night and a day, and I was adrift at sea. On frequent journeys, in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers, in toil and hardships through many a sleepless night, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. And apart from all other things, there is a daily pressure on me, for all my anxiety for all the churches. So Paul understood suffering. Just a quick summary in case you missed it. He was whipped to almost to death. So when he says 40 lashes less one, that means like almost to death. Very severe beatings he endured 5 times from the hands of people. And then again, from the hands of people, he suffered with beatings from rods. And again, another time from the hands of people, he was stoned, which should have killed him, but he didn't die. 3 times he was shipwrecked. Nature did not like Paul either, apparently. The water didn't like him. I wonder if he had a fear of water. That doesn't matter. Countless dangers he faces on the road. He starves. And then at the end, he says, and I feel so much anxiety and tension when super apostles come into my church and try to mess everything up. It's a whole list of physical, natural, and emotional sufferings that Paul endures. But despite all of this, Paul writes later in Philippians that he's content in any situation. Sorry, before I say this, Paul's in a Roman prison when he writes this in Philippians. Like, not having a good time. Roman prisons were not good. If you want to look it up. Roman prisons were not a fun time. And he's sitting there writing, I can be content in any and every situation because Christ is his all in all. I'm paraphrasing. He boasts in his sufferings because he gets to be a living testimony to the world that he is only alive writing to them because of the power of Christ. And at the end of like that earlier passage here, reading in 2 Corinthians, this is what I'd call like it's the hardship talk where he's having this like fighting, punching match with his words with these false leaders. Is my favorite passage. It's so much of my favorite passage that it's in my Instagram bio. So I should tell you how serious it is to me. This is 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 10. So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I'm content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I love this passage so much. I don't know if there's a slide for this one that has stuff highlighted, but if it doesn't, that's fine too. Oh, awesome. Two things that stick out to me that I want to share with you guys. Maybe you've read this before, but Christ says to Paul when he's asking about this thorn, that actually, like he says, Paul, my grace is sufficient for you in my weakness. So he's weakened, and in his weakness, he has an opportunity to humbly rely 100% on God for everything, on God's power for every situation in his life. Then Paul says something that I don't know about you guys, but when I read it, it's actually, there's two different times when I read this. I read it when life's going pretty good. You know, we're in you look at like the language of Psalm 23, you're by still waters and green pastures and life's pretty good. It's a bit easier for me to like understand and wrap my head around it in those moments, but when I'm in like the valley of the shadow of death, it's a lot harder. And he says, where is it here? I'm content in my weaknesses. And he's saying that in light of Christ's power working through his weaknesses. And I think it's something that's really easy to say in the moment when life's going great. And then when you wake up the next day and life is falling apart all around you, it's a lot harder to say that, Jesus, I'm content in my weaknesses. So I have a phrase, family story for you guys that I got permission from my dad to share. It's really, really fun. It's about my grandparents. I brought this to read out of it, but also because it's my grandparents' Bible that I was given like a few months ago. It was like the 25th wedding anniversary Bible. So it's really old, but that's besides the point. My grandparents were pretty awesome. I never actually got to meet my grandfather, but my grandma was like just the best person I think ever. I'm sure everybody, yeah, whatever. My grandfather was a doctor here in Manitoba. He was trained to be a doctor, and he packed up everybody and went to India to be like a medical missionary. So he was in this city helping people with leprosy and other diseases, and then he'd like go travel around India doing medical work. So he gave up so much of his life serving. All my aunts and uncles, some of them were born here, some of them were born there, some of them they all lived there at a time. My dad was born in India, and he remembers like walking along, and just they did a lot of walking, and there was leeches that came out of the ground. That's all I remember. Anyways, it's crazy. All this to say, eventually, Grandpa comes back to Canada. He's pretty old at this point, and he retires. He's like ready to like settle down finally after doing a lot of work overseas. And a few years, my dad is not exactly sure about the time, but I think it was like either a year or two after he like retired and settled down, he's in a nursing home, and then within a year he's dead with this horrible, it's like dementia, but it's like a genetic, it was some other thing that's a really long name that I have no idea how to say properly. But it was really tragic. He retires and then he's gone. And my dad was always the rebellious. Like, they all grew up as missionary kids. They were all Christians, but he was always the one pushing back against that and never really getting it. And this was like a really big moment for him of, God, how could you do this? This man gave up his entire life for you. He gave up like a lot of money he could make being a doctor in Canada and serving all overseas. And he was really struggling with his faith at this point. And one day he goes to the nursing home where my grandpa was staying. And he walks in and he's looking for my grandma, his mom, and he sees her down the hall. And he's going to like there to console her. And she turns around and she's like beaming with joy and smiling while her life's falling apart all around her. And she's going from room to room in the nursing home, telling people about Jesus and just like giving them like fresh baked buns and stuff. She's just like being a missionary in this nursing home where her husband is dying. It's insane. And my dad sat there and he was telling me, he said it was like watching someone carrying a little basket with like firecrackers, I think he said. Firecrackers of Jesus and joy, and just going from room to room, like throwing it in. And he was sitting there watching that and just in awe of her. And that helped him change his mindset about it, about that situation. Seeing how my grandma, who has the most to lose in this situation is actually the most happy. And that's not to say this did not affect her. Like, it was seriously hard and painful for her. But this how she would show everyone around her how happy she was just so powerful for my father. So I share this because I'm not trying to like understand like why was my grandpa born with this disease that was going to activate as soon as he retired. I'm not trying to figure that out, but I want to talk. Like, I share that to testify with the whole story of Paul too, of what God is capable of doing in the worst situations of our lives, when everything seems to be falling apart and God is standing there doing incredible things, like with my grandma walking around and throwing stuff, firecrackers. Wow, okay, you know what? We're just going to stop that. So, like, we believe in a God who heals. And sometimes that healing might not actually look the way we want it to be. Like, in my grandfather's case, he wasn't healed in this life, but he was healed in, like, his eternal... Like, I can't imagine how happy he would have been to finally leave his body that was falling apart and just be with Jesus forever and see the God he served his entire life for. And Paul's life is also a testimony to this. And it's a testimony to the grace that Christ has for us in our sufferings. And I talked about Psalm 23 a bit earlier, and I want to go back there. Actually, I'm going to read it from this because it's here. But it's really olding. It's like the first translation of the NASB. So there's a lot of thous, but it's cool. So I'm going to read Psalm 23 to you. I don't have a slide for this. Here it is. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou dost prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So something that stuck, I love, I know it's like, I feel like that's like a really popular psalm, like pretty popular. But one thing, I just keep going back to it and reading it and reading it and reading it. And like, eventually, after reading it for a bit, I was like, wait a minute. God is still, like, he's still the same God. He's still the same shepherd when he's leading the sheep towards still waters and green pastures, and when he's walking through the valley of the shadow of death with the sheep. He's the same God in both situations. And I don't know if this is something that you can actually like say, because it took me a long time to say this, but I don't know about you, but I would much rather be beside the good shepherd in the valley of the shadow of death than walking along still waters apart from him and without his guidance beside me. And yeah, before we end tonight, before I hand it back over, I want to give us some I think it's pastoral insight. I don't really know what this is, but it's just, I want to look at how Jesus responds to human suffering in the gospel really quick for us all. So in John 11, Christ hears that Lazarus is ill. Lazarus, there's these women called Mary and Martha, and their brother Lazarus. They send somebody to Jesus when Lazarus falls sick. And this messenger comes to Christ and he says, Lazarus is going to die. He's really sick. We need you to come now because we know you can heal him. I'm going to paraphrase this. So, and he says to his disciple, I want you to notice who he says this to and who he isn't saying things to in the story. So he says to his disciples, not to the messengers and not to Mary and Martha, but he says to his disciples, this illness does not lead to death. It's for the glory of God, so that the Son of God would be glorified to it. So, first thing I want to look at the story is Jesus says to his disciples, this has happened so that I can show my divinity. I can show that I'm the Son of God through this. And again, notice who he isn't saying that to. He's not telling that to the messengers to go tell it to Mary and Martha, who are mourning and weeping that their brother's dying, to go tell him that. And when he arrives, he finds Mary and Martha. They're obviously really distraught because Jesus took his time getting there, and in the time of him getting there, Lazarus passed away. One of the sisters won't even go out to meet Jesus. The other one goes out and says, if you were just here, this wouldn't have happened. So they're distraught and they're angry and they're mourning the loss of their brother. And he comes to them And the Bible says that he was deeply moved by their pain. His heart breaks seeing what sin has done to his creation. And this is where it's really important to notice what he isn't saying to them. He sits with them and he weeps with them. It's like, I love that. It's like the shortest verse in the Bible, like Jesus wept. And it's this powerful, the author's obviously trying to make it show that this is like an emotional time for Christ. And saying that he was even moved in his spirit seeing this happen. But he doesn't come to Mary and Martha, and he doesn't like kneel down beside them and be like, hey guys, this isn't written yet, but if you flip to Romans 8:28 in the future, you'll see that all things actually work together for the good of those who are in Christ. So like, don't worry. He doesn't say that, although that's true. He doesn't say what he's like, we saw earlier in the story, that Christ is actually, I can't do this and hold the mic. He's holding two things in tension. He's like doing this, pulling on both ends, almost. Well, both are still true, that yes, like what Paul says in Romans 8 is true. And what he said in John 11 is that this is like actually happened so that I can show my glory through it is true. But he doesn't say that to Mary and Martha. He sits there and he mourns and he weeps with them, and he sits in their mourning and cries with them. Which is also great because in Romans 12, a different part of Romans, Paul says to weep with those who weep. And of course, like, I was in this course our church did for some people to talk about how to help people who are in trauma and like traumatic situations who are suffering. And one of the things the instructor was saying is like, I think he was saying this to me because I think he was afraid I might do this. Because like, I'm very like wordy in my head, and sometimes it just comes out the wrong way, and it's really mean. But he was like, even if you have the right theology, you don't say that to people when they're mourning. And we use this story as an example. But yeah, people don't always need to hear Romans 8:28 when they're at a Lazarus situation. Like, they don't need to hear that, even though it's true. So our sufferings draw us closer to Christ. And the story shows us Christ's compassion for us in our heartaches, in our grief, and in the moments when it feels like the world is falling apart all around us. I wanted to try not to talk about myself for as much as possible, but there's something in my life that happened this fall. The long and short of it is, I wasn't feeling good for a few weeks. I was just kind of like, the semester's almost over, I'll just push through it and I'll be fine. And it got so bad, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't really eating very well. There was something else, I forget. A lot of bad things all happening all at once, and my body was kind of like falling apart. And I just got to make it through to December, it'll be fine. And one morning, my mom was like, dude, you need to call if you're not going to go to the doctor, call Health Links, I think it's called, the nurse on the phone. So I call Health Links, and I'm like on the phone, and I'm like listing all the symptoms I've been feeling and all this stuff, and the nurse is like, Nick, are you sitting down right now? Sorry, she said Nicholas. That's my phone. Yeah, she said, Nicholas, are you sitting down right now? And I'm like, yeah, why? She's like, is there someone like in the house with you? And I was like, yeah, why? She's like, you need to go to the hospital right now, and you shouldn't drive yourself. And I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. And it hit me like a brick wall. Yeah, it hit me like a brick wall of realizing, I actually am not doing good right now. And to hear someone say that, because I was just kind of gaslighting myself that everything would be fine. Anyways, long and short of it, I had to step out of everything and just kind of like become a recluse for a bit, and it was great. I'm an introvert. It was awesome. But it was really hard to stop because I was going for so long. And in that, I don't know if you guys have heard of this artist. His name's Josh Garrels. He put out this album actually the same week that this was happening, and in one of those songs, it was he had redone this old hymn from this dude. I think his name is George MacDonald. I'm going off my notes here, so I don't have any of this here. I think his name was George MacDonald, and he was this pastor who lived years ago. And his life story is, he's like 19, he's 21, he's engaged to this woman. He goes blind out of nowhere. He wakes up one morning and just can't see. His fiance is like, I don't want to take care of you, leaves him, and he's stuck. His whole life's falling apart. His parents are I think his father had already passed away. His mom is not able to take care of him, and he's blind at 21. He hasn't learned his whole life how to live, and he decides he's going to become a pastor. And he writes this song called Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go. I don't know if it's the actual original name of it, but that's like the Josh Garrels version of it. And there's these lyrics in it that say, I'm just going to read through it to you guys. Oh love that will not let me go, I rest my weary soul in thee. I give you back the life I owe, that in the ocean depths its flows may richer, fuller be. My life is not my own, it's yours. O light that follows all my way, I yield my flickering flame to thee. My heart restores its borrowed ray, that in the sunshine's blaze its day may brighter, fairer be. So light a fire in my soul, and I'll burn for you. This is the part that hit me when I was sitting there listening to this, and everything seemed to be not working in my life the way I thought it was supposed to. O joy that seeks me through the pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow through the rain and feel that the promise is not in vain, that the morn shall tearless be. So anoint me with joy, and joyful I will be. O cross that's lifting on my head, I dare not ask to fly from thee. I lay in dust life's glory dead, and from the ground the blossoms red, life shall endless be. And the whole last 2 minutes of the song is just him repeating over and over and over again, we will sing, holy, holy is the King of Kings. And this hit me in this moment. No, and I looked it up, what the guy's story was. I'm the original writer of the song, what he was going through, that he could say that is so amazing. I think it just testifies to the power of Christ in our lives and what he can do in our sufferings, because he is the great comforter. So I'm going to close, and I want to invite the band and the prayer team up. But if you need some prayer, and maybe if you just need someone to weep with you today, I want to invite you to come up to the front to receive prayer for that. If you have an area in your life where you want to see God move in, come up and receive prayer for that.